The night was cold and heavy with silence. John Walker locked the last door of the repair shop where he worked. His hands tired and covered in grease. The streets were almost empty. Only broken lamps and old neon signs gave some light. He pulled his jacket close and started walking toward his small house at the edge of town. It was just another quiet night, or so he thought, but then he heard it, soft footsteps behind the old metal bins. Not the sound of a drunk man, not the echo of an animal. It was different, careful, weak, almost broken. John stopped, his heart beating faster. He turned his head slowly, his eyes searching through the shadows. There in the dark corner someone was hiding at first. He thought it was a child, small and trembling, but then her eyes glowed faint blue in the dark. Her skin had strange pale lines that shimmered when the neon light touched her. She was not human. The girl stepped back as John saw her clearly. Her clothes were torn, dirty with mud and dust. Her breathing was fast, almost panicked. She looked like she hadn't eaten for days. Still, there was something proud in her eyes, something refusing to break. John raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's all right," he whispered, his voice calm, but she didn't answer. She only pressed her back against the wall, her body shaking. John realized she could not speak his language well. He took a small step forward, then stopped. Her glowing eyes followed his every move. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the bread he had saved from dinner. Slowly, he placed it on the ground between them. The alien girl stared at the bread, her lips trembling. Her hunger was stronger than her fear. Finally, she bent down, grabbed it, and ate in small, desperate bites. John watched silently, his chest heavy. Who was she, and why was she here alone? He had heard stories. Refugees fleeing from war, aliens escaping destruction. Most humans turned them away. Some even sold them to patrols, but John couldn't do that. Not when she looked so broken. When she finished eating, her glowing eyes lifted to him. There was still fear, but also something else, a small flicker of trust. She whispered one word in broken human tongue: refuge. The sound of that word shook John. He knew what it meant. She was running, she had no home, no family, no safe place, and now, by some strange twist of fate, she was asking him, a simple mechanic, to help. A sharp wind cut through the street, and the girl hugged herself tightly. Her skin patterns glowed brighter for a moment, like fading lights. John noticed her legs shaking as if she could no longer stand. He sighed deeply, his heart fighting his mind. If he took her in, trouble would follow, but if he left her here, she would die before sunrise. Finally, John stepped closer and offered his hand. For a long moment she stared at it, her face filled with doubt and fear. Then with weak fingers she placed her hand in his. Her skin was cold, almost icy. He helped her stand, guiding her out of the shadows. They walked through the silent streets together. John felt every shadow watching him, every corner hiding unseen eyes. He knew the patrols would punish him if they found her, but he couldn't turn back now. The girl leaned against him, too tired to walk alone. When they reached his house, John quickly opened the old wooden door. Inside, the room was small, just a bed, a table, and a heater. It wasn't much, but it was safer than the streets. He guided her to the chair and gave her water. She drank as if it was life itself. Her glowing eyes softened for the first time. She whispered something in her own language. Words he didn't understand, but her tone was clear. It was thanks. It was relief. John sat opposite her. Watching her closely, he had no idea who she really was, what she was running from, or what danger she carried. But one thing was certain. His life was no longer simple. Outside, the wind howled through the broken streets. Far away, the sound of patrol sirens echoed in the night. John glanced at the alien girl sitting in his home. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her story, but he knew one thing. His choice to help her would change everything, and in that quiet moment, the refugees' arrival marked the beginning of a storm neither of them was ready for. The house was quiet, too quiet. John shut the door carefully, checking twice that no one had seen them enter. The alien girl sat on the chair, her small body bent forward, as if she was carrying invisible weight. Her glowing eyes scanned the small room, confused but also alert. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the heater, made her tense. John placed a blanket around her shoulders. She touched it softly as if the warmth was something strange. For a long time, neither spoke. John didn't know what to say, and she didn't know how to speak. Only the sound of her slow, shaky breathing filled the room. Finally, John whispered, "You're safe here." He wasn't sure if she understood, but her eyes softened for a moment. Her glowing patterns flickered, then dimmed as if her body was calming down. But deep inside, John could feel it. Something was wrong. Something hidden. He warmed some soup and placed it in front of her. She looked at it, hesitant, then slowly began to eat. Each spoonful seemed to bring her back to life. Her hands trembled less, her face relaxed a little. Yet every now and then she looked toward the window, as if expecting someone to break in. John leaned against the wall, arms crossed, studying her. She was unlike any refugee he had ever heard about. Her body was delicate but strong. Her glowing lines moved like rivers under her skin. Her eyes held both fear and fire. Who was she really? As the hours passed, the silence grew heavier. John tried asking her name, but she only shook her head, whispering something he couldn't understand. Her words were broken, scattered, like a language that refused to fit into human speech. But one word she repeated again and again: refuge, refuge. Later that night, John prepared a small corner of the room for her to rest. He gave her his own bed and chose the floor for himself. But when he lay down, he couldn't sleep. The house felt strange now, alive with an energy he couldn't explain. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought about her glowing skin, her trembling hands, and the haunted look in her eyes. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. John sat up, his heart racing. The girl was standing near the window, her back straight, her hands pressed against the glass. Her skin lines glowed brighter than before. Her breathing was faster, heavier, almost unnatural. John rushed to her side. "What is it?" he asked in a whisper. But she only turned her face toward him, her glowing eyes wide and strange. For a second, he saw something different in her gaze. Not fear, but instinct, raw and powerful. Then just as quickly, she looked away. Covering her face with her hands, John placed a hand gently on her shoulder. She flinched at his touch, then froze. Her body shook like she was fighting something inside, and when she spoke, her voice was weak but clear enough for him to understand. "Not safe. Inside me in season." The words struck him like lightning. Season? What did that mean? Her body trembled harder and she sank to the floor. John knelt beside her, trying to steady her, but she shook her head and whispered again. "Season. Choice, only one." John's chest tightened. He didn't understand fully, but the way she said it made his blood run cold. She wasn't just a refugee, she was carrying something deeper, something dangerous inside her. Her body wasn't simply weak from hunger, it was reacting to something else, something she called a season. That night, sleep never came. John sat awake, watching her as she finally collapsed on the bed, her glowing patterns fading into soft pulses. Her breaths were shallow but steady. He could see the struggle in her face even while she slept. Her body was fighting itself, and he had no idea how long she could last. Outside, the streets were not quiet anymore. Voices echoed in the distance, patrols searching. Boots against metal, John's heart pounded. He moved to the window and pulled the curtain slightly. 3 armored patrols walked past his street. Their scanners glowing red, they were hunting. And he knew exactly who they were hunting for. Behind him, the alien girl stirred. Her glowing eyes opened slightly, and she whispered something too soft to hear. John returned to her side, placing the blanket back over her. For a moment, her hand touched his, weak but deliberate. Her skin burned with strange heat. Her pulse fast. John swallowed hard. She was a refugee, yes, but not an ordinary one. Her body was tied to something she couldn't control. A secret season that was pulling her closer to him, and outside, the world was ready to destroy her for existing. John knew the silent house would not stay silent for long. The storm was only beginning. The morning light crept through the broken curtain. John sat at the table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in his hand. He had not slept all night, his mind restless, his ears sharp to every sound outside. The alien girl still lay on his bed, her glowing lines dim but alive. Every time her chest rose and fell, he felt both relief and fear. When she finally opened her eyes, John noticed the change. They glowed brighter in the daylight, almost too bright. She sat up slowly, covering herself with the blanket. For a moment, she just watched him. Her gaze heavy, John shifted uncomfortably, feeling as if she could see through his thoughts. "You need food," he said softly. He placed bread and a small bowl of soup before her. She nodded, taking small bites, but her hands shook as if she was forcing herself. Something about her was different from the night before. More restless, more intense. It wasn't just fear of patrols. It was something inside her, pushing, pulling, burning. Finally, she whispered in broken words. "Season, inside, strong now." Her voice trembled, yet her eyes held a strange fire. John leaned forward, trying to understand. What does that mean? She closed her eyes, searching for human words. After a long silence, she spoke again. My people have time, cycle, mating season. The last two words came out sharp, awkward, heavy with shame. John froze, his heart pounding as the meaning sank in. Her hands gripped the blanket tightly. Without bond, body break, mindfall, death, she whispered. Her glowing lines flared for a second, then dimmed again. John's throat went dry. So that was it, the secret she had been hiding. The storm inside her. She wasn't just weak. She was fighting against her own nature. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. He was just a mechanic, a simple man. Not someone who could deal with something like this. But then he looked at her again, her fragile form, her trembling hands, her eyes that begged for life. He couldn't walk away, not now, before he could say anything. A loud noise shook the air outside, the sound of patrol trucks rolling down the street, their engines deep and sharp. John moved quickly to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see. Two armored vehicles stopped near the market, soldiers stepping out, scanning every face. The search was getting closer. The girl stood up, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. Her body swayed, almost falling, but John caught her by the arm. Her skin was burning hot, her pulse racing unnaturally fast. Easy, he whispered. Stay down. She looked at him, her lips parting, her voice breaking. They find me. I die. Please. Her words cut straight into him. John pulled her away from the window and guided her to the back room. He hid her behind the old wooden crates he used for tools. Stay here, no sound, he whispered firmly. She nodded weakly, clutching the blanket to her chest. Moments later, there was a knock on his door. Hard, heavy, demanding. John's heart nearly stopped. He wiped his hands on his trousers, trying to look calm, then opened the door. Two patrol soldiers stood there, their metal helmets shining. Scanners in their hands. Report, one said coldly. Any unusual activity? Any strangers? John shook his head, forcing a casual tone. Just me. Same as always. The soldier narrowed his eyes, looking past John into the small house. For a second, John thought it was over, that they would storm inside and find her. But the other soldier muttered, Nothing here, move on. They left, their boots clanging on the metal street. John closed the door slowly, his legs shaking, his breath uneven behind him. The girl emerged from the shadows, her body trembling. Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears she could not hold back. Safe. Because you, she whispered. John shook his head. You're not safe. Not yet. He knew the patrols would come back. Maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight. He couldn't keep her hidden forever. But he also knew one thing for certain. She could not survive without him. That evening, as the sun went down, John found her sitting quietly by the small heater. Her eyes followed him with a strange intensity, not the fear of a stranger anymore, but something deeper, heavier. He felt it too. Though he didn't want to admit it, an invisible pull between them, something her season had awoken. She whispered softly, almost too quiet to hear. Choice. Must choose. The words sent a chill through John's body. Her voice was not only desperate, it was final. Her kind did not get many choices. Once the season began, there was only one path, and now she had chosen him. John stared at her, his mind torn, his chest heavy. He didn't ask for this. He didn't want this, but as he looked into her glowing eyes, he realized something terrifying. She wasn't just a refugee anymore, she was bound to him, and he was the only thing keeping her alive. And somewhere deep in his gut, John knew this was only the beginning. The night pressed down heavy on the small house. John sat at the table, his hands shaking slightly as he sharpened a piece of scrap metal into a rough blade. The alien girl lay on his bed, her glowing lines shifting faintly like moving rivers under her skin. She looked peaceful, but John knew better. Inside her, a storm was building, a storm she had warned him about. Every sound outside made him tense. The patrols had passed again earlier. Scanning the street, knocking on doors, they were closing in, and John knew it was only a matter of time before they came back. But his fear of the patrols was nothing compared to the weight of what she had told him. Her cycle, her season, her need for a bond or death. When she finally stirred, her glowing eyes opening slowly, John felt his chest tighten. She sat up, her gaze fixed on him with an intensity that froze him where he stood. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, in broken words, she whispered, Must know. Truth, John nodded slowly, setting the blade down. Then tell me, he said softly. All of it. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders, her glowing lines flickering like fireflies in the dark. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. My people. Hunted in war. We flee, no safe world. Patrols want us gone, they kill men. They take women, sell, break, use, I run. I hide, but now, season come, cannot stop. Her head lowered, her voice cracking as she continued. Season makes body burn. Mind lost, only bond stops it. Bond with mate. Her glowing eyes lifted to him, shimmering with both fear and hope. Only choice. You, the silence after her words was sharp. John felt the air leave his lungs. He was just a mechanic. A man who fixed machines and kept to himself. Now this alien refugee was telling him her life depended on him. On his decision. And worse, she wasn't asking. Her body was forcing the choice. John stood, pacing the small room. You don't understand, he said quietly. If I do this, if I protect you, they'll hunt me too. The patrols don't forgive men like me, and if the neighbors even suspect, I'll be turned in before morning. Her eyes filled with tears that caught the faint light. She pressed her hands to her chest, her body trembling. Without you? I die, not tomorrow, not later, soon. Very soon. John's jaw tightened, his heart torn in two. Every human instinct screamed at him to push her away, to stay safe. But then he remembered the first night, the way she ate the bread in desperate bites, the way her voice shook when she whispered refuge, and now, the way her body burned against her will, fighting to survive. Before John could answer, a sudden, hard knock rattled the door. His blood turned cold. The girl's glowing eyes widened in terror. John pressed a finger to his lips and guided her quickly behind the crates again. Her glowing patterns dimmed as she tried to hide her light. The knock came again, sharper. Open! A voice barked from outside. Patrol. John's hands shook as he opened the door a crack. Two soldiers stood there, their scanners buzzing faintly. One of them pushed forward. Report any strangers. A female refugee was seen in this district. John forced a tired smile. Strangers? You think anyone comes here? This street is dead. Only me. The soldier's eyes narrowed, his scanner beeped faintly. Detecting something inside, John's heart raced. But then the other soldier cursed, hitting the side of the scanner. False reading. These old houses mess with the signal. They stepped back, suspicious but not certain. We'll return. If you're hiding her, you'll pay, the first one growled. When they left, John shut the door slowly. His breath shaky, the girl crawled out from the crates. Her face pale, her body trembling. She whispered with breaking voice, You risk. For me, John met her gaze, his jaw tight. Because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. Her glowing eyes filled with tears. Slowly, she stepped closer, her hands shaking as she touched his arm. Her skin burned with strange heat, her pulse racing. Her voice was fragile but steady. Then you are my bond, my only choice, my only hope. John froze. He could feel the weight of her words, the gravity of what she was asking. It wasn't just survival, it was a vow, a link, something permanent. He had never asked for this, never imagined it. But now the truth stood in front of him, glowing in the dark, trembling with desperation. Outside, the patrols hunted her kind like animals. Inside, her instincts burned, demanding a bond to survive, and John, a simple man, had become the center of it all. He looked at her, really looked at her, and he knew. His next choice would change both of their lives forever. The confession was no longer a secret. It was a promise and a threat. The streets outside were no longer safe. John knew it the moment he stepped to the window and saw patrol shadows moving against the pale street lamps. They were searching every corner, knocking on every door, and the sound of their boots echoed like thunder. Inside his small house, the alien girl clung to the blanket, her glowing lines flickering with unease. She knew, just as John knew, that time was running out. All day he had kept her hidden. Every knock, every shout outside made her body tense. Her glowing eyes followed John constantly, as if he was the only anchor keeping her alive. But there was something else now, her instincts, burning stronger with each hour. Her breath grew shorter, her skin hotter, her voice weaker. The season she spoke of was no longer just a warning. It was here, and it was pulling her closer to him. That evening, John placed food on the table, but she barely touched it. Her hands trembled too much, and her gaze was fixed on him, Not in fear this time, but in something heavier. Something he didn't dare name finally, she whispered in her broken human words. They come. Soon. Hunters. John stiffened. Hunters? She nodded weakly. Not patrol. Worse, hunters of my kind. They track, scent, heat, season. Her eyes glowed brighter and she pressed a hand against her chest. They know. I close. They will find. John felt cold spread through his veins. Patrols were bad enough, but hunters? If what she said was true, then they weren't just searching randomly. They could sense her cycle, smell her instincts, and if they found her, they wouldn't just kill her. They would take her, break her, and make sure no one else could hide. As night fell, the house grew heavy with silence. John sat near the door with his rough blade in hand. Every sound outside made his heart pound harder. The alien girl moved restlessly on the bed, her body glowing faintly in the dark. Her breathing was uneven, her hands clutching the blanket as if to keep herself from falling apart. Then faint footsteps echoed outside. Not the loud, heavy march of patrol boots. These were softer, sharper, deliberate. Hunters. John held his breath, his hand gripping the blade tighter. A shadow moved across the curtain, then another. Voices whispered in a language he didn't understand. Guttural and cold, the girl sat up suddenly, her glowing eyes wide with terror. She grabbed John's wrist, her voice breaking. They hear. I feel them. John, please. His chest tightened. He had never heard her say his name before. It came out trembling, desperate, almost sacred. For a moment John froze, torn between fear and resolve. Then he stood, pressing a finger to her lips. Quiet, he whispered. I'll keep you safe. The door rattled slightly. Shadows lingered outside. John forced himself to stay still, his breath shallow. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, the shadows moved away, fading into the night. But John knew they weren't gone. They were circling, waiting, hunting. When he turned back, the alien girl was trembling, tears shining in her glowing eyes. Her voice cracked as she whispered, They never stop. Once they scent, they follow until death. I am danger. To you. John knelt beside her, his rough hand resting on her shoulder. You're not danger, he said firmly. You're someone who needed help, and I chose to help. Her glowing eyes met his, full of confusion and pain. She whispered, almost like a confession. Why? Humans do not risk for us.
Why you?
John looked at her for a long time. The answer was simple, but heavy. Because leaving you out there would have killed me inside. Her lips parted, but no words came, only tears sliding down her face. That night she couldn't rest. Every hour she woke, clutching her chest, her glowing lines pulsing faster. Her body was losing the fight, her instincts pulling stronger toward him. At one point, she crawled from the bed and sat close to where he sat guard. Her hand brushed against his, trembling but deliberate. Her glowing eyes lifted to him, filled with both fear and something else. Need, John. Only you, she whispered, her voice weak. He swallowed hard. Every instinct told him this was wrong. Dangerous, impossible, but another part of him, deeper, stronger, couldn't ignore her. The hunters outside could break in any moment. The patrols could return. Her body could collapse from the cycle. Yet she chose him again and again. John looked at her hand resting against his, rough human skin against glowing alien light. And he knew. The hunters weren't the only shadow. The greater shadow was the bond forming between them. A bond that no hunter, no patrol, no law could undo. The night stretched on. Outside, hunters prowled the streets. Inside, two lives sat side by side in silence. A mechanic and a refugee, a human and an alien. And though the world outside hunted them both, in that moment they were no longer strangers. They were bound by fear, by choice, and by something deeper neither dared to name yet. The hunter's shadow had fallen, but the real storm was only beginning. The sun never rose peacefully that morning. Gray light spread across the broken town like ash. John hadn't slept, not even for a moment. He sat near the door with his rough blade in hand. The alien girl lay on his bed, her glowing lines flickering like firefighting to stay alive. Every pulse of her skin was weaker than the last. Her body shook, her breath shallow. When she opened her glowing eyes, they burned with both fear and need. She whispered in broken words, Time. No more. Choice now. John clenched his jaw. His chest heavy, he had known this moment was coming. Ever since she confessed the truth about her season, he had tried to fight it, tried to pretend maybe they had more time, maybe there was another way. But now, looking at her trembling form, he knew there was no more delay. She sat up slowly, her hands gripping the blanket like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Her glowing eyes locked on him. "You must decide," she said in her fractured tongue. "If you refuse, I break, I die. If you accept." Hunters stop, cycle ends, bond made. John's heart pounded. The weight of her words pressed on him like a mountain. He wasn't just choosing for himself, he was choosing her life. If he turned away, she would collapse before the day ended. If he agreed, everything would change. Before he could answer, heavy footsteps shook the ground outside. John rushed to the window, his eyes narrowing. Armored patrols marched down the street again, this time with scanners glowing brighter, and behind them darker figures moved. Hunters, their masks sharp, their movements silent. They weren't searching anymore. They were closing in. John's breath caught. They must have tracked her scent. Just as she warned, he turned back to her quickly. Her glowing eyes widened as she sensed them too. Her voice cracked with terror. "They come!" "John, no time. Decide." His body froze for a heartbeat. The door rattled under a sudden heavy knock. "Open!" "Search order," a patrol shouted. The alien girl grabbed John's hand, her skin burning hot, her voice breaking. "Please." "Only you, bond or death," John's mind raced. He could betray her now, hand her over, save himself. That was the easy choice, the human choice most would take. But when he looked at her, this broken refugee who had whispered refuge on their first night, who had risked nothing but still trusted him, he knew. He could not throw her away, not her. The knock grew louder. The hunters whispered outside, their voices like knives against the door. John tightened his grip on her hand. "Then I choose," he whispered, his voice firm. "I choose you." Her glowing eyes filled with tears, her body trembling. In that moment, her glowing lines flared bright. Wrapping around her skin like fire, she leaned against him, her forehead pressing to his chest. Her voice was weak but steady. "Bondmate, hunters lose." John barely had time to process her words. The door cracked under the force of boots outside. He pushed her gently toward the back. "Stay behind me," he whispered, raising his blade, but she clung to his arm, her strength returning in small pulses. "No, together," she whispered. Her body was no longer fading, it was stabilizing. The bond had begun, the door finally burst open. Patrol soldiers stormed in, followed by two dark hunters. Their scanners buzzed, their eyes sharp, but when they looked at the alien girl, something in their expression shifted. Shock, disbelief. One of them growled, "Impossible!" She bonded with a human? John stood firm, the girl clutching his arm. Her glowing lines pulsed brighter, and her weak voice cut the air. "Too late. Bond sealed." "You cannot take me," the hunters hesitated. Even the patrols looked uncertain. This wasn't what they expected. Bonding was sacred among her kind. It meant protection. It meant untouchable, and now she had chosen a human. One of the hunters stepped forward, rage in his eyes. "This is against nature," he roared, but the girl's body flared with light, her strength rising from the bond. John tightened his blade grip, his voice steady. "Then nature will have to change." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. The patrols exchanged uneasy glances. The hunters hissed but stepped back. They couldn't break the bond, not without consequences even they feared. Finally, they retreated, their footsteps echoing into the night. The door hung broken, the street silent again. John lowered the blade slowly, his chest heaving. The girl collapsed against him. Weak but alive, her glowing eyes met his, filled with relief and something deeper. "You chose me," she whispered, her voice trembling with both wonder and fear. John nodded, his hand steady on her back. "Yes, and I'll keep choosing you." The silence that followed was heavy. The danger wasn't over. The world outside was still hostile. But for now, in that broken little house, a choice had been made. A human and a refugee stood together, bound by something neither could undo, and the galaxy itself would tremble at what that choice meant. The broken door creaked in the cold wind. John stood there, his chest rising and falling fast, the rough blade still in his hand. The alien girl leaned against him, her glowing lines pulsing steady now, not fading, not weak. For the first time since she arrived, she looked alive, but outside, the street was empty only for a moment. He knew more would come. John guided her back to the chair, helping her sit. Her glowing eyes followed him closely, filled with both relief and fear. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. John shook his head. No. You saved yourself, I just stood beside you. She shook her head, clutching his hand with trembling fingers. No. Without you, Bond not real, life not real. Only you. Her glowing eyes shimmered like stars as she spoke. John's chest tightened. The weight of her words pressed deeper than any blade could. The hours passed slowly, the silence thick. But both of them knew the hunters had not given up. Patrols might step back, but hunters never stopped. They would return stronger, angrier. The bond had protected her, but it had also marked John. Now he wasn't just a man hiding a refugee. He was a man who had broken the order of two species. Near midnight, a sharp howl echoed through the ruined streets. Not human, not machine, the girl flinched. Her glowing lines burning bright. They call, more, she whispered, her voice shaking. John moved to the window, his eyes narrowing. In the distance, shadows gathered, hunters moving like wolves. Circling closer, he turned back to her. They won't stop, he said firmly. She nodded, her gaze steady despite her trembling body. No, but now, Bond gives strength. Not just me, you too, John frowned, confused. What do you mean? She reached out, her glowing hand pressing against his chest. Her voice was soft but strong. When Bond made, humans share power. You protect me. I give you fire. At first, John thought it was only words. But then he felt it, heat rushing through his veins. His arm steadied, his sight sharpened, his fear dimmed. It was like a second heartbeat inside him. Her heartbeat, her life, their bond. The hunters howled again. Closer this time, John picked up his blade. His grip firm, he turned to her. If they come through that door, we fight together. Her glowing eyes blazed brighter. Yes, together. Moments later, the house shook with impact. The hunters struck the walls, their claws scraping metal. One smashed through the broken door, tall and dark, eyes burning red. John stood his ground, the alien girl beside him. Her glowing light spreading through the room. The hunter hissed, "She is ours." "No," John growled, "she's mine." The hunter lunged. John moved faster than he ever thought possible, the blade flashing in his hand. The alien girl raised her arms, her glowing lines bursting with light that blinded the intruder. Together, they struck. John's blade cut deep while her light burned like fire. The hunter collapsed, hissing before fading into the dust. More followed. But each time they attacked, John and the girl fought as one, her light guiding his strikes, his strength shielding her body. For every hunter that entered, another fell, until the last one hissed in fury and fled into the night. The street outside fell silent again. Only the wind carried the ashes of their enemies. Inside, John dropped to his knees, exhausted, his chest heaving. The alien girl knelt beside him, her glowing hand pressed to his. "You are my bond," she whispered, her voice trembling with both pride and love. "You chose me, and I chose you." John looked into her glowing eyes. In that moment, he no longer saw just a refugee. He saw strength, survival, and something deeper. A partner who had risked everything for trust. He pulled her close, his voice low but firm. "Then whatever comes, we face it together," she nodded, tears glowing against her skin. Yes, together, outside. The galaxy would hear whispers of what happened that night, of a human who bonded with an alien refugee, breaking every law, every rule, of hunters defeated not by weapons alone, but by a choice stronger than fear, a choice that bound two lives into one. Inside the silent house, broken but still standing, the bond pulsed between them like fire and light, unstoppable, unbreakable, and as John held her close, he knew the galaxy would never be the same again.